Bitter old baggage, my daughter-in-law hissed across the cranberry sauce, her wine glass trembling with a triumphant, almost cruel, glint in her eyes. The words cut through the festive hum of the holiday dinner, silencing every clink of cutlery, every murmur of conversation. The whole table froze. My son's fork, laden with mashed potatoes, hung midair. The grandkids, usually a whirlwind of giggles, suddenly seemed impossibly small and wide-eyed, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. I felt my heartbeat thrumming in my ears, a frantic drum against the sudden, shocking silence. But I didn't cry. Not a single tear welled up, not a flicker of the vulnerability she so clearly expected to see. Instead, I met her gaze, held it steady, and allowed a small, knowing smile to play on my lips. Then, with a deliberate slowness that belied the storm raging inside me, I reached into my purse, a vintage leather clutch I'd carried for decades, and set a single, elegant ivory envelope beside the glistening turkey. It wasn't just an envelope, it was a carefully wrapped grenade. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that by the time that envelope was opened, this holiday, this carefully constructed facade of family harmony, would be utterly ruined. The family fortune, built brick by painstaking brick over generations, would be irrevocably redirected, and my son's supposedly perfect marriage would begin to unravel faster than you can say, past the gravy. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine, what was earned. Stay till the very end to understand how one thoughtless, cruel insult cost them absolutely everything. Look, I know what you're thinking. Dramatic much? People always assume I'm exaggerating when I retell this story, painting me as some kind of vengeful matriarch. So, before you cast your judgment, let me give you the receipts, the unvarnished truth of how we got to that Thanksgiving table. I was barely 20 when I walked down the aisle, full of youthful dreams and a heart bursting with hope. Life, as it often does, had other plans. By 40, I was a widow, left to navigate the choppy waters of single parenthood, raising my boy alone. There was no safety net, no cavalry coming over the hill. Just me, a mountain of grief, and a fierce determination to give my son the best life possible. I worked tirelessly, bookkeeping for 3 busy dentists, meticulously balancing their books by day and my own life by night. Every overtime hour, every skipped lunch break, every late night hunched over ledgers went directly into his college fund. Every vacation I dreamed of, every exotic trip I yearned for, became his spring break adventure, his school trip, his chance to see the world. I couldn't afford to show him myself. My life became a testament to deferred gratification, all for him. So, when he brought Lauren home 10 years ago, a vibrant, effervescing young woman with a laugh that filled a room, I truly welcomed her with open arms, ready to embrace her like the second daughter I never had. I didn't just offer platitudes. I offered tangible support, believing that investing in their future was investing in my son's happiness. I co-signed their starter house, a charming little bungalow that needed a lot of love, pouring my savings into the down payment. When she eyed a shiny new SUV, declaring it a necessity for her burgeoning career, I paid the down payment without a second thought. And when she insisted on a dream wedding, a lavish affair on New Year's Eve, I quietly stashed away 20 grand, ensuring she could have the fairy tale she envisioned. I never, not once, wanted gratitude in return. What kind of mother demands payment for love? All I ever asked for, all I ever truly expected, was simple respect. Acknowledgement of my efforts is a basic courtesy. Apparently, in Lauren's world, that was just too much to ask. Thanksgiving was at my house, of course, because it always is. It's a tradition I cherish, a day when my home fills with the comforting chaos of family, the aroma of roasting turkey, and the promise of warmth and togetherness. This year was no different, or so I thought. I'd spent days preparing, meticulously planning every detail. I cooked the magnificent 14-pound bird until it was golden and juicy, baked my signature maple pies with their flaky crusts, and even went to the trouble of crafting a gluten-free stuffing, just for Lauren's latest fad diet. I wanted everyone to feel cherished, to feel seen. My sin, as Lauren later labeled it, was a seemingly innocent question. Mid-meal, between bites of sweet potato casserole, I simply asked if they'd finally set a date for the vow renewal they kept promising the grandkids. It was a gentle nudge, a hopeful inquiry, nothing more. But it was as if I'd struck a raw nerve. Lauren's eyes, usually so bright, narrowed into slits, a storm brewing behind them. The smile vanished from her face, replaced by a sneer that twisted her features. "You can't stand that he chose me over you, can you?" she spat, her voice dripping with venom, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear clearly. "You're nothing but a bitter old baggage clinging to your checkbook for relevance." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The entire table went silent, the clinking of silverware replaced by the thumping of my own heart. My son, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, the man who was supposed to be my protector, just stared intently at the tablecloth, as if the intricate pattern held the secrets of the universe. He didn't meet my gaze. He didn't utter a single word in my defense. No one spoke. The silence was deafening, a betrayal in itself. I felt a fiery heat crawl up my neck, a blush of indignation and hurt, but I forced myself to remain composed. My voice, when it came, was soft, almost a whisper, yet firm with an unspoken steel. "Understood," I said, my eyes still locked on Lauren's, refusing to break contact. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, I slid that envelope, ivory, size A6, perfectly crisp, onto the pristine white tablecloth. It wasn't a toss or a slam. It was the precise, unhurried placement of a queen laying down the winning card, her gaze never leaving her opponent. The game, I knew, had just irrevocably changed. The envelope, innocently unassuming in its ivory simplicity, held a formal notice of due balance. Not some casual handwritten note, mind you, but a cold, hard legal document, professionally printed and undeniably official. It was the kind of paper that makes your stomach drop just looking at it. You see, just 2 months prior, Lauren had approached me, her voice sweet and cajoling, asking me to bridge her credit card debt. She painted a picture of overwhelming interest rates, 28% she'd said, and the dire consequences for their family finances. She needed a quick, discreet solution to avoid what she termed financial ruin. Always the rescuer, always trying to help my son and his family, I agreed. I quietly transferred $38,000, not from my checking account, but by taking out a second mortgage on their house, a mortgage that, thanks to my careful maneuvering with my attorney, was solely in my name. It was a calculated risk, one I believed was protected just in case. The note inside the envelope politely, almost chillingly, demanded repayment in full within 10 calendar days. It stipulated, in no uncertain terms, that failure to comply would result in the account being forwarded to collections and, more importantly, the deed of trust being invoked. In plain English, the language was unmistakable: pay up or lose the house. I hadn't acted impulsively. Weeks before, I'd already spoken at length with my attorney, a sharp woman who understood the nuances of family dynamics and financial protections. The papers were filed, the lien perfected, every I dotted, every T crossed. All that remained was the reveal, the moment of truth. Lauren, her bravado of moments earlier completely evaporated, picked up the envelope with trembling fingers. Her eyes scanned the first few lines, and I watched, almost dispassionately, as the color drained from her face faster than wine from a tipped glass. Her jaw went slack, her eyes wide with dawning horror. You'd evict your own son?" she whispered, the accusation laced with disbelief, as if I were a monster. I met her gaze, calm and unwavering. "No," I corrected her, my voice still soft, but with an edge of steel. "I'd evict the woman who just called me baggage." The message was clear. This wasn't about my son. It was about her disrespect, her entitlement, and the line she had just irrevocably crossed. Those 10 calendar days that followed compressed into an absolute blur of frantic, increasingly desperate phone calls. Lauren, true to form, cycled through every tactic imaginable. First came the rage, screaming accusations down the phone about my cruelty, my selfishness, my supposed desire to destroy her life. Then, the tears, a sudden torrent of crocodile tears, pleading for understanding, for mercy, for the family we supposedly were. When those failed, she moved to public shaming, posting carefully curated Instagram stories filled with cryptic, tear-streaked selfies and vague, dramatic captions hinting at betrayal. She even orchestrated a group text to the extended family, painting me as a heartless villain, hoping to rally them to her cause. But my actions, though harsh, had a quiet logic that resonated with some, and others were simply too uncomfortable to get involved. One evening, my son arrived at my door unannounced. His eyes were bloodshot, his shoulders slumped, carrying the heavy weight of the situation. He looked utterly defeated, a shadow of the vibrant young man I'd raised. He didn't yell, didn't accuse. He simply asked for Mom's mercy, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. I didn't scold him. I simply served him a warm mug of cocoa, just like I used to when he was a boy and had a bad day at school. I listened patiently to his pleas, his anxieties, his desperate hope for a way out of the mess. When he was done, I slid a second envelope across the counter, this one thinner, less imposing, but equally significant. Inside was a repayment schedule, a generous offer at a 0% interest rate. There were, however, two non-negotiable contingencies: mandatory family counseling and a sincere, written apology from Lauren, to be read aloud at Christmas dinner, in front of the very family she tried to turn against me. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about repairing the damage, about respect, about acknowledging the hurt. Lauren, blinded by her pride and a stubborn refusal to admit fault, flatly refused. The apology was a bridge too far, the counseling an admission of weakness. So, day 10 arrived, just as swiftly and surely as I knew it would. My attorneys, having been on standby, activated the protective foreclosure. Their credit score, once respectable, plummeted a staggering 180 points overnight, a tangible consequence of her choices. Suddenly, the shiny SUV I'd paid the down payment for was voluntarily surrendered, back to the dealership. The lavish vow renewal venue, once a symbol of their perfect future, was cancelled, the deposit lost. Lauren's boutique shopping sprees, once a weekly ritual, quickly morphed into a reluctant reliance on Costco coupons. It's funny, isn't it, how fast pride deflates when the bill finally comes due, when the consequences are no longer abstract but painfully real. 2 weeks before Christmas, the culmination of their choices became undeniable. They packed up their belongings, the remnants of their once comfortable life, and moved into a tiny, cramped one-bedroom apartment. The furniture, once carefully chosen for their dream home, was hauled away by friends who kept asking, their voices laced with awkward curiosity. So, what exactly happened? It was a public, painful dismantling of the life they had taken for granted. Lauren, ever the master of self-pity and public performance, posted a tear-streaked selfie online. The caption read, "Toxic in-laws destroy families," a desperate attempt to garner sympathy and cast herself as the victim. But this time, the comment section didn't quite light up the way she'd hoped. Oh, some were sympathetic, yes, but a surprising number were curious, even critical, asking pointed questions about why she would trash the very woman who had, for years, bankrolled her comfortable life. The narrative she tried to control was slipping, and the truth, in its own quiet way, was beginning to emerge. Meanwhile, I was downsizing gracefully, not out of necessity, but by choice. I found myself a modest, charming condo with riverview sunsets, a peaceful sanctuary that felt entirely my own. And finally, after years of putting it off, I booked the solo cruise I'd postponed since 1998, a journey for myself, a celebration of newfound freedom and self-worth. On Christmas Eve, my doorbell rang. It was my son, hat in hand, looking hesitant and alone. Lauren wasn't with him. He apologized then, genuinely, his voice shaking with emotion, the raw vulnerability a stark contrast to his earlier silence. He spoke of regret, of understanding, of how much he'd learned. I hugged him tightly. a mother's embrace that held both sorrow and fierce love. I told him that forgiveness is always free, a gift I would readily give. But trust, I explained, is a far more fragile thing. It's rebuilt, painstakingly, piece by piece, never gifted back. We're working on it now, weekly coffee dates, no lending, just lots and lots of listening. It's a slow process, but it's real. This whole ordeal taught me some profound truths, lessons etched into my soul. Money, I realized, is never just money. It's so much more than numbers in a bank account. It's shorthand for respect, for value, for the very fabric of relationships. When you remove financial entitlement, when you pull back the curtain on who's truly contributing and who's just taking, you quickly see who values you as a person versus who values your wallet. It's a painful but necessary clarification. I also learned a hard truth about boundaries. They only feel cruel to the people who have been directly benefiting from your lack of them. Setting a boundary, even a firm one, isn't about being mean. It's about protecting yourself, your resources, and your peace. For those who've grown accustomed to your generosity without limits, your sudden no feels like an attack, a personal affront. But it's not. It's self-preservation. Since my story, in various forms, began to circulate within my own circles, my inbox has been overflowing. I get messages from moms, from aunties, from grandmothers, all asking variations of the same question. Should I stop paying for my daughter's car? Is it okay to say no to my nephew's latest business venture? And I tell them the same thing every single time. Generosity without limits, without clear expectations, eventually morphs into entitlement. And entitlement, especially when it's met with a blatant lack of gratitude, deserves consequences. Is it hard to be the one to deliver those consequences? Absolutely. Does it feel harsh in the moment? Without a doubt. But is it effective? Oh, my dear, it is absolutely effective. It's how people learn, how boundaries are established, and how self-respect is reclaimed. Have you ever been called selfish just for finally saying no? Ever drawn a line, knowing it would cause ripples, but also knowing it was the only way to save your sanity? Drop your story in the comments, and tell me what city you're watching from. If this message hit home, hit like, and share it with that auntie who gives too much or that friend who never gets thanks. Together, let's respect the trend again. That Thanksgiving insult became the spark that rebuilt my family tree. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was reclaiming respect. Now, Lauren signs her texts with respectfully, and my son books our coffee dates weeks in advance. Turns out, shock treatment grows courtesy. So remember, luggage travels, and sometimes it leaves behind the people who can finally carry their own weight.